Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Welcome, Catholic pilgrims, to day 204 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. Have you ever had somebody ask you to pray for them for a certain intention of theirs and you told them no because you didn't think it was right? I have never heard of somebody actually doing that. I've felt it in my own heart saying, in my own mind, I don't think this is quite the right thing that I should be praying for, but I've never been bold enough to say, no, I can't pray for that because I don't think it's good for you and I think it's actually a sin. Well, Sister Faustina today actually says that because she's obviously braver than I am. And so that is what we're going to talk about today in Notebook 2, numbers 958 through 963. Some days ago, a certain person came to me and asked me to pray for her intention, as she had some urgent and important business. All of a sudden, I felt in my soul that this matter was not pleasing to God, and I replied that I would not pray for this intention. But I will pray for you in general, I added. A few days later, this lady came back to me and thanked me for not having prayed for her intention, but rather for her, because she had been motivated by a spirit of revenge toward a certain person to whom she owed respect and veneration in virtue of the fourth commandment. The Lord Jesus had changed her interior dispositions, and she herself acknowledged her guilt, but was, however, surprised that I had penetrated her secret. Today I received a letter from Father Sapotsko, who sent me greetings for my feast day, February 15th. His greetings gave me joy, but his poor health made me sad. I had known about this by interior intuition, but had not quite believed it. But it seems to me that if he himself wrote that this was so, then the other things about which he did not write me are also true, and my interior knowledge has not deceived me. He requested me to underline all that I know does not come from me, that is to say, all that Jesus tells me which I hear in my soul. He has already asked me to do this several times, but I did not have the time, and to tell the truth, I was in no hurry to do so. But how does he know that I have not done this? I was very surprised. But now I am setting about this work with all my heart. O my Jesus, your representative's will is clearly your holy will, without a shadow of a doubt. February 16th, 1937. Today I entered a neighboring room by mistake, and so for a while I talked with the person who was there. When I returned to my own room, I thought about that person for a few moments. Then suddenly Jesus stood by my side and said, "My daughter, what are you thinking about right now?" Without thinking, I snuggled close to his heart because I realized that I had been thinking too much about creatures. This morning, after completing my spiritual exercises, I began at once to crochet. I sensed a stillness in my heart. I sensed that Jesus was resting in it. That deep and sweet consciousness of God's presence prompted me to say to the Lord, "O most holy Trinity dwelling in my heart, I beg you, grant the grace of conversion to as many souls as the number of stitches that I will make today with this crochet hook." Then I heard these words in my soul, "My daughter, too great are your demands." Jesus, you know that for you it is easier to grant much rather than a little. That is so. It is less difficult for me to grant a soul much rather than a little, but every conversion of a sinful soul demands sacrifice. Well, Jesus, I offer you this wholehearted work of mine. This offering does not seem to me to be too small for such a large number of souls. You know, Jesus, that for 30 years you were saving souls by just this kind of work, and since holy obedience forbids me to perform great penances and mortifications, therefore I ask you, Lord, accept these mere nothings stamped with the seal of obedience as great things. Then I heard a voice in my soul. My dear daughter, I comply with your request. Often see a certain person dear to God. The Lord has great love for him, not only because he is striving to spread the veneration of God's mercy, but also because of the love he has for the Lord God, although he does not always feel this love in his own heart and is almost always in Gethsemane. However, this person is always pleasing to God, and his great patience will overcome all difficulties. Oh, if only the suffering soul knew how it is loved by God, it would die of joy and excess of happiness. Someday we will know the value of suffering, but then we will no longer be able to suffer. The present moment is ours. I heard a good priest say one time, God will not bless your sin. And we recently heard Pope Francis say something very similar when speaking about priests and bishops blessing same-sex unions. You can bless the person, the individual people, but to bless the same-sex union, Pope Francis said, that's just not something God can do. He can't bless sin. And that's hard for us to hear because same-sex unions are so widely accepted in our culture today. And that's not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is what the priest said, that God will not bless your sin. Several years ago, somebody very dear to my heart was writing to me and lamenting the fact that her relationship with her live-in boyfriend was not working out at all. It just wasn't working out. And she was like, I pray all the time and nothing good is coming of this. And I asked if I could be very blunt. And this person said yes. And I said, you are living with this person and you're not married. God is not going to bless this sin. He's just not. Now, she didn't ask me to pray for it specifically. She was saying that she had been praying for things to get better. And I said, you're going to have to, move out of the house. You can still be together, but move out of the house and have a relationship that's not, lived like a married couple. And then start asking God to work on, helping you both get your relationship to a better place. And, That's hard for people to hear. It really is. And Sister Faustina today, she is confronted by somebody, a sister, who is asking her to pray for something. And Sister Faustina knows that this is not a good thing for this sister. And she just flat out says, no, I'm not going to pray for this intention of yours. She said, all of a sudden, I felt in my soul that this matter was not pleasing to God. And I replied that I would not pray for this intention, but I will pray for you in general. And that's a great reminder. If somebody is bringing something to us and asking us to pray for, their intention, and we know it's a sin, or we know that it's not something that's good for their soul, we can still pray for the person. We can still offer our prayers for God to open their minds and their hearts to what they're desiring and what they're asking and how that may not be good for their lives. We can most certainly do that, and that's what Sister Faustina does. But we should not pray for things that we know are bad. And we should not pray for intentions that we know are either sinful or just aren't good for that person's soul. And, I got to commend her. To say that out loud to somebody is not the easiest thing in the world to do, I would gather. I can't imagine people would be like, oh, okay, well, thanks anyway. Especially in today's, hostile environment, if you were to say to somebody, no, I can't pray for that intention because I don't feel like that's what's best for your soul, or I feel like that's a sinful thing that you're wanting to do. I really honestly can't imagine too many people responding with, oh, okay, well, I'll think about that, which, is something that we should really reflect on. Would we be the kind of person who would accept that and listen to it, or would we get super defensive? I know I probably would get super defensive. But that's a hard thing to say. But good on her for saying it, because later, she does pray for that sister's soul, and God works through that prayer to bring about a change in her heart. And she comes back and says, whew, thank you. Thank you for not praying for that, because I was set on revenge and I wasn't going to follow the fourth commandment. And, I'm glad you didn't pray for that because it was not good. Her eyes were opened. And so a better path was chosen. And so that was really good. But we have to be brave enough to do that. We have to be brave enough to say, no, I can see what you're asking for, and it's not good. In fact, what you're asking for is a sin. And even if I were to pray for it, God is not going to bless that sin. He just isn't. And I know that's hard for you to hear, but that's the truth of the matter. God cannot bless sin. He just can't. Now, he can teach us a lot of lessons by getting us through bad times and things like that, but he is not going to bless any type of sin. And so, to have that kind of courage is, I don't know. Right now, I think of myself as being somebody who could say that to somebody, but then in the moment, I don't know how strong I would be if somebody asked me that. So definitely something I need to think about within myself and, be prepared for that. I guess it's one of those things where you need to think ahead of time. If somebody comes and asks me for this, to pray for, an intention that I know is a definite sin, then here's what I'm going to say, and think it through so that you're ready. Because sometimes those things can kind of just hit you on the side of the face and you don't really recognize it, and it catches you off guard, and then you just stumble through, oh yeah, sure, I'll pray for you. And then you walk away and you're like, oh no, I can't pray for that. So definitely something to think about. But again, Sister Faustina, a great model here for us of sometimes our Christian faith asks us to say things that are difficult to say to people and hard for people to receive, but we should say them nonetheless in a charitable way. So think about that. That is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I will see you back here for day 205. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.